Okay, super excited for this video because we are filming in the very brand new podcasting room. So, this is our first one. I'm stoked to be on it. Today, we are going to be talking about my 10-step framework to help you launch your door to door team from scratch. So, this is great for you if you are a business that's looking to get into building out a door to door team, or maybe you have a door to door team or multiple teams right now and you feel like there's some inefficiencies or you're not as effective as you want to be. This training is going to go over 10 steps that I use in order to not just help companies launch new teams, but whenever I'm consulting a business, if they've got a team in place and they feel like they're not very effective, we go through this framework to check all of their systems to make sure things are airtight. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and kick off step one. So, a lot of times people go immediately into hiring their first sales leader. And there's a couple things we want to put in place before we end up doing that. The first thing that you're going to do actually is identify your executive sponsor at the company that is going to be helping to kind of manage this program. So, if you're watching this video, maybe that's you, or maybe it's going to be another one of your team members. But this is a super important step because like it or not, you're going to be pretty involved in the process. There is quite a bit that goes into getting a new sales channel off the ground for a company. Even if you are excellent in sales, you've got a lot of resources, it's still going to take some time. And it's really important to have somebody that is a high level person at the company. So, one of the executives is typically who I would choose that can help the new sales leader like assimilate into the business, understand your systems, and make sure that they are doing a good job being conduit between you as part of the leadership team and the sales reps they're going to be hiring. So, this person is typically the CSO, Chief Sales Officer, Chief Revenue Officer or CRO. Maybe it's the president or the CEO of the business, but it's typically one of those roles that's going to step in here. This person should be experienced in tracking sales KPIs and be very familiar with the vision that the business has for this team that they're growing out. So the role of this person is going to be building out all of kind of those back end systems that help this team operate and to fill in the leadership gaps that the sales leader is going to have when you first bring them on board. I'm going to talk about where these gaps might come up in a little bit in the video, but your role is to essentially make sure that they can spend as much of their time as possible managing the team out in the field, and you are there to help build out the training systems and the new incentive they're going to run and new hire uniforms and things like that. So this role is very, very important. Step two, once you've chosen your sponsor on the executive team, is going to be to build out the compensation plan. And comp plans, manager compensation or overrides, and budgets, I kind of all bucket in here because all of your financial stuff needs to get figured out at this point. There's so many different ways that I could train you on how to build out comp plans. And I think we're going to have like a whole different video series on motivating behaviors through compensation. But the short version of it is you're balancing three different forces when it comes to building out your compensation plan. Number one is you want to align the pay with the actions that you want to promote within the team. A lot of times for a door to door team, especially if you're setting up something like an appointment setting position or model, that person needs to be incentivized by their compensation to work out in the field. They have to have a strong work ethic. They're putting in a lot of top of funnel work. So essentially paying them on install or some really back end metric doesn't always motivate that behavior, even though it could potentially compensate them more. In fact, a lot of times when you compensate reps more for the work that they're doing in the field, you will end up getting less production out of them because it's not like they now have the same personal goals for what they're trying to produce. In fact, a lot of times because they are used to making a certain amount of money, when you start to pay somebody more, they will typically revert back to making their comfortable amount. So if before they needed to get 4 sales a month in order to hit their, monthly bills they needed to cover, and you increase your compensation and now they only need to do 2 sales a month to hit the same number, they're probably going to end up doing 2 sales a month. Just saying. The second force you need to consider is aligning the compensation plan with your cash flow. And forces 1 and 2 here are antagonistic, meaning they're pulling apart from each other. So force 1 is trying to make you pay your reps kind of higher up in the chain. It's a sooner milestone based on the work they're putting in. But force 2 is typically meaning that you want to pay them later on in the process in order to match up when you are receiving money from a financial lender or a partner, or however you're, gaining your revenue for this door-to-door team. And then third force here is you want to stay competitive in the market. So if you're able to find good alignment with forces 1 and 2, then you need to make sure that you're checking, okay, is this dollar amount something competitive based on all of my competitors in the market, or am I way overpaying my reps, or am I way underpaying my reps? So if you're able to get all three of those in line, it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, how you choose to pay them. There's a lot of good compensation models out there. And again, we'll probably do some more video training on that. So, part 2 of this is building out your manager compensation. This is obviously massive for your team. And this first sales leader that you're hiring, that's going to be spending a lot of time out in the field and is going to be focused on getting the team off the ground in the beginning, this person should have the highest manager compensation plan, in my opinion, out of anyone else that you're hiring, because they've got a very tough job and they're going to be in the field a lot. And there are a lot of ways that, times can get tough. This position is hard. So you can see the person that is managing the team, that is actually out in the field with them, there's a lot more turnover in that role than you would expect because of how hard it is. So we want to try to pull one of the levers to fix that, which is to pay them a little bit more. And then third is your budgeting. So this budget that you're going to build and set aside should be variable based on job or percentage of revenue that you're pulling in. And this budget is going to be used in order to incentivize the team, help facilitate team dinners, recruiting events, things like that, to really jumpstart the culture, the hiring, and the sales production. Okay, so step 3 is you are now going to purchase and implement your sales tools. So this is going to be your software stack that you're putting into place in order to help your sales team. Part 1 of this is finding a really good door knocking tool. And there's so many out there, but yours needs to cover these basics. And then I don't care who you choose from there. There's a lot of great companies. This tool needs to be able to mark the pins or the customer interactions that people are having in the neighborhood while they're door knocking. And those pins need to be able to track specific milestones that you can then use on reporting and training purposes. What I care about the most here is that you can track total doors knocked, total conversations had or qualified buyers that people are running into, appointments set, and then you're able to start tracking your appointment to sale metrics as well. You also want this tool to have accurate homeowner data. You want it to be easy to use, typically in an app format, or something where if you don't have good service in the knocking area that you're in, the pins are still going to load and you're still going to be able to use the program. And then obviously you also need to be able to cut area and see your stats at the end of the day. So there should be some type of leaderboard function, or at the very least, like an actual KPI, like reporting function, so that you can see all of your stats in there for all of your reps. The goal of this tool is not just to be able to track that stuff, but also to be able to hold your team accountable to working all the hours and putting the effort in. So this tool is only as effective as the people using it. And so you want to make sure that you are doing a good job setting a cadence to check in with your team and look at their tool to see, are they knocking enough doors? Where's the issue if they're running into any production problems? So part 2 is a activity tracker. My favorite is still this really old app I've been using since 2015 to knock, and it's called Tally Counter. So it's literally this like kind of habit tracking sort of thing that you're able to set up, where you can customize the different stages. And then as you're knocking your doors, you're just literally clicking these little buttons to kind of tally up. What I mean by this is you're going to have a pipeline of your door pitch that you set up within this tool. So the way that I would set it up is doors knocked, doors opened, partial pitch, full pitch, asked for the appointment, set the appointment. So if I put all of those stages into my app, as I do my door pitch, I start talking to a homeowner. Maybe I only get to the partial pitch spot. So I'm going to mark off that the door was knocked, the door was opened, and I got my partial pitch out. If I do this at every door, essentially at the end of the day, I'm able to see, where am I hitting the snag? Am I getting through my entire pitch, but then just struggling to ask for the appointment? Am I barely getting a couple sentences in? So maybe my pitch and kind of the way I'm breaking preoccupation and starting the conversation with the homeowner is the problem. Anyways, this tool is really great and it's typically free. Next is your appointment setting tool. So this might already live within your knocking tool. It might already live within your CRM, but this is going to be important for anyone that's running a setter closer model because you need to be able to essentially get the appointments that are set from the door knocking tool or where the knocking reps are using it over to the closers so that it can live on their calendar. The lead is getting inputted into your CRM and you're able to actually report on all of your appointment outcomes, whether they sat, they didn't sit, maybe they were qualified, maybe they weren't. If you're able to track different appointment outcomes from each of your appointments, you can then not only coach your closers on how to do a better job with receiving those appointments, but it's a great way for you to track and hold your setters accountable and help them kind of train through any issues they're running into. For example, if I'm tracking on my appointment outcomes, anytime a closer shows up to a home, the person lets them in, and then we find out that they weren't actually qualified, like they were a renter, for example, that's a very good reason for you to then be able to have that information and pass that over to your door knocking team to train them and have them do better next time. And then lastly is going to be your CRM tool. So you probably already have this in place. In fact, I hope you do, but it's just a pipeline tool that allows you to manage your customers through the entire sales process and the fulfillment process afterwards. So again, hopefully you have that in place. And the golden kind of rule with all of this tech is you want as much of these things to integrate as possible so that you are not having all of these kind of manual entries or inputs between different apps to make sure that they work and communicate to each other. You want to try to get them integrated. So part 4 is now you're going to hire your sales leader. So this person is the most important hire, obviously, that you're bringing on to your team to run your door-to-door team. They oftentimes get kind of mislabeled as the person that needs to be responsible for running the entire show here. And I'm going to argue that that is more of the role of your executive sponsor. There's a very tight relationship between your executive sponsor person that is helping to run this team and then your sales leader. A lot of times I see companies that have the wrong person in the sales leadership role, and the entire team and the development of that team comes to a screeching halt. The things that I think are normally things we think would be good for this role, but actually aren't, are character traits like they've knocked a lot of doors, but they're actually totally burned out on knocking. Like they don't want to do it anymore. Maybe they really want to close. And so they want to manage the team because they want to receive appointments from the team and they're just going to sit around and close them. So they're not going to knock the door. Maybe they talk about how excited they are to build out all of the systems, but they do so in a way where if you're kind of reading between the lines, you're realizing they don't actually want to run the team. They want to sit back, manage the team, put some systems in place, and hope things go well. This role, you guys, has to be out in the field. They have to be excited about knocking doors, and they have to want to do that every single day and be what we call the rabbit. So this is going to be your person that is setting the pace of production for the entire team. They should be the first person out in the morning, the last one to go home at night. They should be setting team records for everyone to try to hit and kind of bump up against. And they should literally be the example that you want them to set for all of your team. They should be professional, they should be polished, they should be friendly, very positive. And this person doesn't have to always be great at building out systems and how to structure a new hire training. That is the role of the VP or executive sponsor, in my opinion, until this person, the sales leader you bring on board, can grow into those responsibilities. It is more important that they can go out in the field and they're going to do so reliably every single day with the reps to help them get better. If you make the wrong hire here, I'm telling you, it's going to slow down or completely stop your growth. So make sure that you are ruthless in making the right decision. Part 5 is going to be building out your new hire training program and systems. So to keep things really simple here, because this is my favorite topic and I could talk about new hire training forever, is you're trying to retain effective sales reps and you are trying to make them self-sufficient in some main categories so that they are able to go out in the field and be pretty much left alone and just held accountable to going out every day, continuing to get better, but they're able to do their job without a manager or somebody else having to hold their hand through it. There's 4 places where I want to see self-sufficiency in a new hire before I would consider them graduated out of my new hire training program. Number one is going to be their work ethic. So, this is effort and pace that they're putting into their time in the field. They should understand how to optimize their schedule. They should feel like they completely understand how to hold themselves accountable to working all of the hours and basically do what's expected of them when it comes to discipline and work ethic. Part two is going to be prospecting and finding qualified buyers for whatever product they're selling. So this might be if you're in roofing, they are able to understand, what does damage look like on a roof? How can I tell from the road or when I'm walking up to a house? If this is solar, they need to be good at checking for shading and understand what parts of the roof are more south facing versus north facing. Maybe you can tell a little bit based on the way the house looks if you think this person is likely to pass your credit checks or not, etc. And then part three is going to be turning those qualified buyers into actual leads. So that could be setting an appointment if you're in roofing or solar. That might be turning them straight into either someone that you're able to sell or a go back if you're in pest control or alarms or something like a quicker sale. And then number four is turning those leads into actual sales. So obviously, again, if you're doing a setter closer model, your setters do not need to know this. So they only need to know steps 1, 2, and 3. But if they're going to be doing the full process from start to finish, then they also need to obviously be able to sell successfully in the home without their manager being there. Then when it comes to actually structuring the events that are happening during my training program, there's 3 steps that I consider here really important. Number one is going to be your classroom boot camp. So this is essentially the time when they are at the office with you going through a slide deck that you've prepared. It is meant to be kind of the first day, first impression for a new rep. So it might last a couple days, but this is going to be their orientation where they're getting 101 information about the industry they're in, the role that they've taken, and the company that you are. So if they can leave knowing all of that information and feeling like, holy crap, this company is really professional. I'm excited to be here. Everything's going great so far. You have nailed your classroom boot camp. Part two is going to be your field training. So I see companies make the mistake sometimes of sending their reps directly out into the field. In fact, sometimes I see them do it before they've even onboarded those people to give them a chance to try it out. That is a terrible idea, in my opinion, because there's a lot of ways that their first day in the field can go wrong. And so I consider, good recruiting practices, good onboarding practices, and good first day classroom boot camp practices as all of these moments where you're able to reinforce that you are a professional company that they should be excited to be working for versus whatever shit show you're going to run into, hoping that you're not running into a crazy customer on the doors on the first day. So if they go through this process in this way, they will have all of these great touch points and they might have a little bit more endurance or thicker skin when they go out if something weird does happen in the field, because sometimes we can't control that stuff. So when they're out in the field, there's kind of 3 parts to the shadowing that I would do. First part is they're going out with their leader and their leader is going to knock every door and do every single door pitch. They're going to debrief between doors and talk about what worked well, what didn't work well, etc. Part 2 is going to be the rep is now pitching and the leader is watching them. And if that rep starts to stumble, the leader is willing to jump in and kind of save the conversation and talk to the homeowner. And then they debrief between doors. And then the last stage there is just going to be having the rep do the door pitch, have the manager watch. And if the rep starts to stumble, the manager is no longer stepping in. So it's kind of this slow letting go of their hand over a few days to make sure that they feel really good about the process. And then stage 3 is just ongoing accountability, because to me, a new hire training program, this could last you guys anywhere from 2 to maybe 8 weeks, depending on the industry that you're in and your sales cycle and how long it takes people to become self-sufficient. But the accountability phase is super important, because just because they know what they're doing or know how to do the basics of the task doesn't mean they're not going to run into hurdles and get slowed down because of their lack of success. So this stage is going to last the longest, but it is literally the leader holding them accountable to doing the daily activities over and over again so that they do not stray and they get enough reps in quick enough in order to see success. New hire training is typically a time-bound thing, right? But it's really how quick can I get this rep to do or this salesperson to do a number of repetitions of their door approach and setting an appointment, going in and doing the sale so that they can bust through the learning curve really fast. If I can shorten the period of time it takes them to do 100 door pitches, they're going to learn it much faster than if it takes 2, 3, 4 times as long. And then my last kind of portion to the new hire training stuff that I like to build out for companies is my new hire experience programs. So there's 3 that I love to put into place. The first one is just having a new hire schedule. This feels really self-explanatory because it is. Now, a lot of times I'm hiring 1099 salespeople, so I cannot require them to be any specific place, but I can give them a suggested schedule that says, hey, if you want to have the most success here or maximize your ability to kind of get through this learning curve, here's the schedule that I suggest. Knock these hours, show up to these meetings, do X, Y, and Z every single day. And that can help give them some guidance because a lot of times new hires, they're coming into a new job. They don't know your industry. They need the guidance. So you're giving this to them just as a suggestion for them to follow. The second one is going to be the new hire roadmap. And this is my favorite because it's essentially putting together a checklist of things that they can do week over week during their new hire training program that's giving them these little, mini wins on their way to starting to get some sales and actual results. But what sucks is when you're in your first week or two and you're still trying to figure out the job. You haven't totally nailed it yet. You're going out and going through the motions, but you're not getting a ton of sales or appointments set. And so you start to get discouraged because the only way you're measuring your success is whether or not you're getting that sales production. So the things I like to put on this roadmap are things like showing up on time and perfect meeting attendance, talking to 25 homeowners a day, watching all of the training videos I've been assigned in my training library for that week. And if they're doing all of those things and they're doing them on time, you've got this, again, pretty thorough weekly checklist that they'd be going through, then ideally they are able to kind of trip over that production because they're doing all of the activities that are going to lead to production starting to happen. A lot of times when we see reps not producing in the first little bit, it's because they're moving too slow and they're not keeping themselves accountable to moving at the pace that's actually going to get them results early on. And then last but not least is putting in place some type of new hire incentive. So this is a great way to both incentivize reps and give them a little competition to run really early on when they start with you. And then it is also a great way to save money on their new hire uniforms. So even if you nail all of this stuff, you have the best possible rep retention, you're still going to start losing people in the first few weeks. It always happens. It's the nature of the industry. So in that event, a lot of times you're giving them multiple shirts on their first day, a hat, badge, polo, whatever. You're giving them all this gear, and then maybe they stop showing up like 3 or 4 days in, and now you're out all of that swag. The way that I like to do this is I give them more pieces of their uniform as they earn their first few sales so that I can give them minimal gear on day one and then have them earn it through the first few sales they get to build up their wardrobe and allow me to spend that money tied to actual production. All right, step 6 is going to be building out your recruiting and onboarding systems. So obviously at Shut the Fluff Up, recruiting and onboarding and training, this is kind of our bread and butter. So there's a lot to unpack here, but to keep it really simple, what you need in the very beginning is going to be first starting with picking where you're going to get candidates. So this is likely going to be an online site where you can pay for job ads, something like Indeed. That's typically what performs the best for us and our clients. Or you might want to do something like start up a campus blitz. So that, if you run them effectively, can be really, really awesome for your team and bringing in hires, especially people that are probably really capable and have a lot of potential, but haven't gotten a lot of work experience yet. So sometimes college people can be perfect fits for this role. But to start off, you really want to try to start with 1, maybe 2 sources max to not get too complicated. So if I was going to choose my first 2, I would recommend an online job ad source like Indeed. And then I would also work on some type of employee referral program because friends and family are maybe not always going to perform better, but they are going to stick around a little bit longer if they are having hard times. They've got a little bit more endurance to stick around through the hard stuff in the beginning of this job. Part two of this is going to be building out and implementing your interview stages. So, the main ones that we like to focus on for this door to door role are going to be candidate applies, then we are doing a resume screen, then we're doing a screening call, then we are doing a main interview, then a job offer, which is going to be a separate phone call aside from the interview, and then we're pulling them in for onboarding. After onboarding, they're going to have their first day and show up for classroom boot camp. Now, the onboarding processes need to be really dialed. Again, this whole part of the process is the first impression that these candidates have of your business. So, if you can have a smooth and very fast onboarding process that's thorough and filled with lots of great communication from the team that's very professional, it's going to really help put the right foot forward when you're starting off this relationship with your new hires. Now, step 7 is getting your new hire uniform. So, typically, these take anywhere from like 2 to 4 weeks, maybe even longer, between when you order and pay for the gear and when you actually get it fulfilled, just depending on the shop you're using. So, make sure that you're factoring that in when it goes to launching your team. But the main things you want to consider here are having some type of shirt or polo. If you're going to do a shirt, I don't recommend a t shirt. I would do some type of, dry fit shirt. Athletic kind of t-shirt, or I would do a polo. Polos look professional. They're just done by every single company everywhere. So I do love when I see teams get kind of creative there to stand out in the field. The second part is going to be the hat. So you want to have some type of like breathable, nice, but not too nice baseball cap with your logo on it, obviously. And then last but not least is going to be your badge on a lanyard. So it is super important to give new hires badges, because having a badge ID that connects that rep to your business is going to help homeowners feel like they can trust that person more when they show up to their home. There are a lot of reps that will go out knocking without a badge. And especially if they have anybody in that territory, ask them for a soliciting license or anything like that, it's just really good for them to be able to show that they are legitimate. They're not there to scam homeowners. And like I mentioned, you can give minimal gear on day one, let's say a shirt and a badge, or 2 shirts and a badge. And then you can work up to giving them extra polos, extra hats, maybe a jacket, a backpack, etc., as they are earning their first few sales with you with that new hire incentive. Now, step 8 is going to be building out your initial kind of culture systems. And culture is my jam. I love talking about building strong, intentional, high performing cultures with teams. And the important thing to think of here is that culture exists whether you think you're intentionally cultivating it or not. So it's a behavior change that you are trying to implement. It is not something where you're starting off from nothing and putting something in place. So you are first going to need to kind of assess, what's the culture right now? What does my team stand for? What behaviors do we expect out of each other? How do we show up in the world based on kind of our team dynamic here? And you might take a look at that and realize, oh my gosh, everyone's kind of sloppy or lazy, or we're totally okay with mediocre performance here. And if that's the case, and that's not what you want when you bring on this sales team, you want to shift it before they get started. It is really important to do that, because it's a lot easier to have people get indoctrinated into your new higher performing culture standards than try to course correct after you've hired a bunch of people into this role. My 3 things that I would think of right away with the team, and this is going to be something that the sponsor and the sales leader should be building together, because both of those people need to be really bought into what you're building. Number 1 is going to be your team meetings. So depending on the cycle of the sale and how much you need to meet throughout the week for training purposes and everything, this meeting might happen twice a week. It might happen every single day. The purpose of the meeting is to be very structured, get some training and recognition in, and keep everybody really high energy so that it can set the pace for them getting out to the field that day. Sales meetings happen before you send your reps out to the field for the day. You want to have the same structure every time. You should be you should start on time 100% of the time and have fun things that happen if people are late. My favorite was, we used to have people sing a Disney karaoke song if they showed up late to a sales meeting. And then after that, you want to go through numbers from the day before or week to date. You want to do some training for the team, role playing, slide decks, whatever. Just make sure that it's professional and intentional. Then you want to go over goals for the day. And then you want to do something fun with the team. Maybe it's a cheer, maybe it's a game, but it's something to kind of get the blood pumping. And then you're going to run that pretty much the same way every single time. There's little ways that I might tweak that depending on the company I'm working with, but almost the same structure works every single time. Number 2 is going to be your team values. So just like I mentioned, you want to define what it is that you want to stand for and what behaviors you want to hold each other accountable to. If you expect everybody to be really, really hard workers, you need to figure that out ahead of time. Make sure that you're kind of weaving that into what you talk about and how you filter out candidates during the recruiting process. And then make it so that everyone feels comfortable holding each other accountable to that standard because you've set that dynamic with the team. And then part 3 is going to be setting up your sales incentives. So in the beginning, you don't need to go too crazy with this, but you should have some daily or weekly or even monthly incentives that you're running. And that metric, that time that goes into the incentive, is directly correlated to the type of sale that you are running. So if you're doing appointment setting models or you've got a quick sales process like a summer program, let's say pest control or alarms, you want to do daily or weekly incentives most of the time, quicker incentives. If you're running a solar company or a roofing company or windows or something that's a little bit longer, it's okay for your incentives to be more on the weekly to monthly basis. That's because if the sales process is longer, you will inherently be getting less within that time period. So it's important to have a longer time period to have enough production happening where things can be really fun. Obviously, you can incentivize a lot of different ways. You could incentivize based on appointments set, doors knocked, staying out late, going out early, how many sales you're getting, quality of sales, amount of revenue, the list goes on. But you want to start simple and you want to have just a couple main ones that you're running just to get the team off the ground. So moving into step 9 is going to be tracking your goals and your KPIs. So first, you're going to want to set goals for your team. You probably already have that if you're watching this video because you wouldn't have cared to start a door-to-door team if you hadn't already had something in mind. But let's make sure that you get specific enough for it to be something that you're driving towards. One thing that I've noticed in our industry is that it's really easy for people to get super ambitious and set goals. Like your sales leader, your sales reps, they're going to set goals and tell you that they're going to do these numbers, and they do not hit those numbers. And it's because they're trying to, set a high standard for themselves. It's coming from a good place. But if you build all of your budgets based on that, for example, the company could be in a bad spot. So the way that I like to get around that is I ask for a commit and a goal. My commit is if your career depended on you hitting this number and I had to build our entire company budget based on you hitting this number, what would you give me? And then the goal is the number that they're actually trying to strive for and they're shooting for every single day. Those numbers should be a little bit different, and it's going to help you have an amount of sales that are coming through every month that you can budget based off of. And then you've got this goal that you're actually driving your team towards. My 4 main categories of goals that I like to set are going to be sales, revenue, hiring, and culture. Now, when you're setting your KPIs, you don't want to go too crazy because it is easy to either track way too many metrics or way too few, and then both ways inhibit you from using them for their actual purpose, which is to help you effectively manage your team. So a couple that I'll recommend. If you're looking at sales KPIs, you want to look at sales volume, sales pipeline. So that's going to be like anything from a lead or an appointment or a contact all the way through. You want to look at your conversion rates between those stages. And then you want to track your cancellation rate. Category 2 is revenue, and I would track total revenue and revenue per job. Category 3 would be hiring. So I would track my total hires, my cost per hire, and my retention rates for them. And then 4th is culture. This is going to be like your team efficiency kind of metrics. Like, how do you measure that people are here, they enjoy being here, and they're doing well? So things I like to track here are the average time to one sale from my new hires, my per rep average or number of deals per rep on a weekly or a monthly basis. That's going to track your team efficiency. And then last is going to be leadership development. So am I regularly bringing in and promoting people organically into leadership? If you are, that's a sign of a very strong, healthy sales organization. All right. And then last but not least, step 10 is going to be hiring your sales team. And it's really important, you guys, to be super picky with your first few hires. And this strategy for your first 5 is going to be way different than your strategy for rep number 50 through 55. The reason being is because if you bring on 5 reps, your first 5 reps, and they're all B level, C level people. Then when you bring in an A plus level rep as your 6th hire, that person's going to look around the room and they're going to be like, I don't know, these people aren't my people. I don't feel like I can learn from them. They don't feel like my peers. I feel like I'm above them. They are going to quit and they're going to go find a job where they are surrounded by people that they think that they can learn from, that are going to be better influences on them. Conversely, if you had a team of all A plus players, you had 5 A players, and you brought in a B player, that B player is more likely to either rise to the occasion and become an A because of their surroundings, or realize that they're not a good fit for the team and they're going to get themselves out. So you want to hire really high level people to start out with. And what I mean by high level is not that they're top producers, because a lot of times these people are going to come in with no experience for this role, and that's totally fine. I more so care about them being a great cultural fit and having really good potential and some of the basic skills for them to be good at sales. If they have all of those things and they're coming in and they're excited to learn and they're going to work really hard in order to prove to themselves and to me that they're worth the job, then they're the right hire. And that's it, you guys. It is a 10-step framework. I've used it for over a decade now to build out a ton of massive and very high-performing sales teams. And it may take a little while to tweak some of the steps to make it work for you and your situation, but I promise you it has worked over and over again and it yields the results that you're looking for. So good luck putting everything together. And if you're looking for more content like this, I train on all of these steps and I actually go into a lot more deep diving on these systems that I put in place at companies within our Sales Recruiting Academy. So this is going to be a platform that's got over 100 videos already, and we're adding new courses all the time on different concepts like building out compensation plans, creating your recruiting systems, interview psychology, new hire retention programs, culture systems, and so much more. So if you're interested, go ahead and click the link in the description and go check it out. See you next time.